alive! It's alive! It's alive! It's alive!
Hello and welcome to Alive After Reading. I'm your host, Tim Niederreiter, and with me today is a new guest to the show, Daemon Manx. Welcome to the podcast.
Hey, thanks for having me, Tim. It's great to be here.
Oh, glad to have you. And I've heard a little bit about you, which is actually kind of unusual for my guests. But anyway, Daemon, I believe you are horror adjacent at least. But tell listeners a little bit about your fiction and the sort of stuff you write and other stuff you do.
Yeah, I guess you could technically call me a horror writer, but the genre is so broad these days. I really, you say horror, that covers so much. Mm-hmm. But I write speculative fiction. A lot of my stories take place in possibilities that could be alternate universes, alternate realities of our own world. I guess with a mix of science fiction, suspense, and even a little bit of fantasy in there. I also do write nonfiction, and but I guess horror is my main genre because the writers that I'm influenced by have all been horror writers in the past.
That's cool. I'm getting kind of a series of horror writers together right now on this podcast. I've had quite a few lately, but anyway, or horror adjacent, right? Like I said, I mean, people who write stuff that could be construed as horror, and I love it because honestly, I've been really getting back into that genre lately, especially in film. Into it for the first time in my film watching, which is kind of interesting for me. I don't know, but I also love I've always loved like Alien. And aliens, that sort of stuff.
I love the way that world has developed, and how we've gone back in time to see the creation of where the aliens are going, and then we go forward. There's such a big alien universe that's, especially from where we started with Sigourney Weaver back in the day.
Yeah, and it's. But then also, and obviously, like the Terminator is also kind of a sci-fi horror movie. That was in a lot of ways, even though the monster is not nearly as grisly as the alien from the movies. Anyway,
I remember the first time I saw Terminator 2 in the movies. I just what a movie that is. And somebody was telling me the amount of visual effects that are in T2 is like less than 6 minutes. Like when he's actually turning into the liquid Terminator, and you would think it's like a lot more than that. But there's like just such a little bit of it, but it's so huge the way they spread it out throughout the movie.
Absolutely. That movie is, everything looks so much more real in those old movies for some reason. Maybe because a lot of it is real costume or an effect that's practical in some way. They did a really good job with some of that stuff. The magic of the cinema, you might say.
Absolutely, yeah.
Anyway,
fantastic.
Though I must say, I've also been. I've been going a little closer to home. Well, closer to our time with Ringu. Not a whole lot closer, I guess. That's like it's 2000s, I believe. The Japanese movie that The Ring was based on.
Oh, wow. Okay, I haven't seen that.
It's really good. It's pretty freaky, but it is actually sci-fi horror, not supernatural. Not really, anyway.
They are so creepy, the Ring movies.
Oh, absolutely.
I've
never seen any of the American ones. I've only seen this one. This is I was like, I can't stand this. But I played the video game Fear back in the day, which is the Fear acronym game or whatever. It's like there's a period after each letter. But that's a first-person shooter where there's a creepy little girl like from The Ring who sometimes appears.
Oh, jeez.
And it's just, it is a scary shooter. Let me put it that way. But I love that. So I'm like, maybe I should give this movie a try. It obviously inspired this game. And so, yeah, I did.
Oh, absolutely. I remember the first time playing when the very first, I'm going to date myself, but the very first Resident Evil game came out. And you round the corner and you hear these munching sounds. And You
Ooh.
see the zombie for the first time, and it focuses in on the zombie, and your bullets have no effect on the creature, and it's getting closer and closer. I think it takes like 10 shots to finally take it down, but yeah, it's really scary.
Yeah, I've never played that one. I've heard I did play Resident Evil 4, and I have 7, which looks just terrifying. 7 is Resident Evil 7 is like I'm not sure, for people who don't know, this is the first person one where you're basically in a house with these corrupt immortal hillbillies. Yeah, it's just insane.
Yeah, I've seen that one. Yep.
So, but speaking of zombies, one last thing. I forgot to mention this before the show, but sometimes in the past I've done a reading segment, and I did recently get this book that the cover just struck me when I saw the promotion for it. It's called Chew. Well, Chew Season 1 by Naomi Alt, and it's about somebody who wakes up from being a zombie. Like, they get cured of zombieism in this post-apocalyptic world, and the chewing thing reminded me of it. It's like, oh yeah. Where you're like, anyway, it's because they still kind of crave meat. They're just, human again. It's weird.
It's funny because my most recent release has to do with a vigilante. Well, the first scene is a vigilante who's in a post-apocalyptic world where zombies have taken over, and he's actually going around taking out people who are scavenging and living off of other people, taking advantage of people. But then it goes in a totally different direction, and it's actually about me. I wrote myself into the book.
Ooh.
Me as an author writing this story and struggling with it because it was so out of my wheelhouse, and it ends up becoming the balance of an author losing his mind because he's trying to write a story that really isn't his cup of tea.
Ah, that's so fascinating. I love it. And it does. What's the name of that one? What's the name of it?
It's in a book called Hacked in Two, which has 2 stories in it. My story is called Deacon, and it's about a deacon, a holy man going around as a vigilante in a post-apocalyptic world. And there's also the other half of the book is written by James Carlson, and his story is called Red Falls. That one's about a couple that goes on vacation and ends up in the backwoods of Pennsylvania, and there's an infestation problem going on. And we'll just leave it at that.
It's funny. I reminds the duology thing, or the double, like the double book, or double novella, or whatever, double storybooks are so interesting to me. I've never been part of something like that. The closest I've been ever was part of a story bundle deal at one point, but a while back now, I interviewed this other author, MF Wall. And she was she had a similar kind of book out. It was called, I believe, I had it on the tip of my tongue. It's The End Is All We See, and that was so scary. I just couldn't get through it. I'm such a wuss. At least I was back then. I was like, I need to. Maybe I grew up a little bit, or I'm just a little less scared of some stuff because. I mean, I don't think it took me forever to watch like Ringu, and now I think I could go back and read some of this stuff that really put me off.
Oh, you could do it.
Yeah, I bet I could. Though for some reason, books. I don't know about you, but books have this effect on me that's much stronger than seeing something on a screen. Usually, at least if they're well written. Like for example, like Game of Thrones. Like it was so much stronger. The feelings of the first book of A Song of Ice and Fire actually made me put the book down and say, nope, can't do this. And then I watched the entire show, much to my detriment later on anyway. My disappointment, I mean. But yeah, anyway. That's
I mean, that's the thing about a book is, and I think that's the thing about my story Deacon is, there's a story taking place on the pages, and then there's the story that the author is actually telling to you as you're reading it. And then there's a third story going on. And that's when the reader actually puts themselves into the story and are absorbed by it, So that's like, if you make that connection as an author, like that's, oh my God, there's nothing better than that.
Oh, that's powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that's what I'm going for in my work. A lot of people, so right now there's like a huge influx of extreme horror going on,
Yes.
which is not my thing. Like
Mm.
a lot of people say, you are the horror with a heart author, which might sound kind of wimpy, and sometimes I do like, oh my God, don't call me that. What are you calling me? Um, but yeah, and it's because I really like to use emotion. If I could make the reader cry or, really pull at their heartstrings, I think that's what I'm trying to get, the most out of my writing. And, I write about, I use a lot of my own life experiences that have happened to me and use that as a basis for where my stories go. And, sometimes I try to insert a message in there or uh, insert a deeper meaning to what my story really is. But yeah, like, I've had a couple people tell me about one of my stories. They're like, I actually cried at the end of your book. And I'm like, winning. Okay, I got you.
I win this one.
I
Point for
won
me.
this one.
Point
Yeah.
for Daemon. Yeah.
Yeah. So that's where I'm, horror with a heart. At first I was like, hey, that sounds kind of weak, but no, actually I think it's a really strong compliment, and I strive for a twist that you don't see coming. Like if I can sneak up on you and you'd be like, I never saw that. I had no idea you were going there. That's a mission accomplished, I'd say.
But because it's like horror with a heart, right? I mean, with that branding, and that if somebody's gonna call you out that way, which it sounds great. I would love to be. I mean, if I was a horror author, I'm more of a fantasy sci-fi author. But if I wrote scarier stuff, I'd be more on. Which actually, some people would swear my stuff's scary enough. But anyway, people, if I was like in your position, I'd be like, well, you couldn't. I would just the only thing you can't do there is like just surprise them with it by blowing up a paper bag behind their head, that kind of thing.
Right.
Yeah, you don't want to just jump out and brutalize something in the story world or in the book just to get a reaction. That's kind of cheap, right? Or am I just inferring
it's
that
got to
wrong?
be thought out. It's got to make sense. It's got to be, oh my God, why didn't and there should be breadcrumbs along the way that the reader could pick up on. They won't usually, but if they say, oh, of course, you were saying that all along, why didn't I pick up on it? My debut novelette is called Abigail. It's about a man living in the South. His name's Adrian, and he's gay, and he knows what it's like to be different. Like, he's been picked on as a child, he's been bullied, and he's having a really hard time meeting someone and finding love. And on the night that he actually meets somebody and thinks that his world is, going to end up perfectly, he comes home and he finds a basket on his front steps, and he opens the basket very carefully because he has no idea what's in it, and there's a baby in there, and the first thing he sees is a set of purple reptilian eyes staring up at him.
Ooh.
And it's a baby like he's never met before, but he instantly falls in love with this child and knows that he will do anything to protect little baby Abigail. And ultimately, this story does, it speaks about, racism and bigotry and homophobia. And, it points a finger, but it does it subtly, and it does it hopefully with some finesse. And it definitely has a twist that I think the readers who have spoken to me have all enjoyed it. And it's up for an award this year.
Oh, beautiful. Which one?
It's up for a Splatterpunk for best short story of the year. Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're going out.
Go on.
Yeah, I'm sorry for interrupting. We're going out to Austin, Texas in August to the Killer Con convention to see how we do. We're up against some really, really top-notch names in the industry, but like they say, it's an honor to be nominated, and for it to
Right.
happen with my debut, it's I'm honored. I'm humbled. It's so it's fantastic.
Yeah, that's wonderful. The closest I've gotten to it, actually, it was funny because it was my first short story that I ever published that I submitted to Writers of the Future. I didn't win, obviously. I probably would have mentioned that sooner if I was starting that. People would know about that story if it had won. But it did get an honorable mention. And I don't know, this horror with a heart thing just resonated with me there because it's called Stolen Parts, and it's about a necromancer in like a modern like small town who's had her heart stolen, like literally taken out of her chest and stolen by a bad guy, by an evil necromancer in the same town. And so she has to help. I mean, it's about 3 necromancers. Let me get this straight in like a small town America, and so her ghost is like helping her boyfriend or ex-boyfriend find her heart and bring it back.
Oh wow, what a great premise for a story!
I don't know how I came up with that one. It's such a weird one. It's like, yeah. I mean, the small town is natural for me because I'm from small towns. I'm from small town Minnesota, and this is what I know. But I don't know, and I love necromancers. I love all sorts of magic and shit. But it's just, I mean, how did I come up with that one? I have no idea. With that
who knows where these stories come from, right? Yeah. But thank goodness it did, because it sounds great. I'd love to read it.
Oh yeah, it's up there. It's out there on Amazon. It's only 99 cents, or Excellent. If you have Kindle Unlimited free. But actually, I'm not sure if it's in Kindle Unlimited. Don't quote me on that. It's just a short story, but I'm never not up to date on what I do with everything there. Anyway, that's enough pimpage from me. I do love the story though. And I mean, I have a friend who loved it so much. It's like he's just trying to get me to write a sequel. It's like a novel-length sequel to it. I'm like, okay, I'll get there eventually.
Yeah, definitely. Sounds like it's wide open for a series there.
Oh, potentially. The problem is I don't really write that much urban fantasy. I do like more far-flung stuff, high fantasy and weird science fiction. But I mean, I don't know. I guess I could write about Minnesota. I guess I could, if I'm asked.
Absolutely. Yo it to everyone out there.
I guess, yeah, maybe I do.
Gotta represent.
Stand up for the Minnesota scene,
That's right.
Yeah, there's a lot of good sci-fi authors who've lived out here, fantasy authors and stuff. Like some of my favorites, I realized were locals. Weirdly, because when I grew up, I was like, wow, Stephen Bruce is a Minnesotan. Okay, but and I've had him on this show too, so name dropping. Okay, there we go.
Excellent.
Yeah. Anyway, so Damon, you have a bunch of other stuff going on. I mean, talking about stories has been really fun so far, but you also run a publishing company. Is that true?
Yeah, that's correct. So I am the owner of Last Waltz Publishing. You want to check us out at www.lastwaltzpublishing.com. There's our shameless plug.
That's a great name for a company.
Yeah, so, because I went with Last Waltz Publishing because I am really drawn to that gothic old world style of writing and Halloween ghost stories. Picture the scene from The Shining where everybody's dancing in the ballroom and they're all ghosts from the 20s, and that song Midnight the Stars and You is playing in the background. Like, it's such a feel, so like I wanted, and well, okay, so let me tell you this. So my first shot out the door, I sent out a couple stories to different magazines, got a whole lot of rejections, and eventually got one accepted. After the first one got accepted, the ball started rolling. And then I started pitching Abigail, my debut novel. And it got picked up by a publishing company. And wow, everything's great. The world is finally falling into place. So what I did not do is I did not really do a full-blown due diligence to check out the reputation and the validity of the publishing company that I was signing to, and I ended up not getting paid my royalties.
Oof.
And they also would take money from the authors when they wanted to purchase author copies of their books, and then just never put the order in. So yeah, like me and about 20 other authors really got raked over. So a bunch of us broke away, and I know James Carlson, he opened up Bloomhouse Publishing, and I opened up Last Waltz Publishing, and we did it pretty much like within the weeks of each other, and we work hand in hand together to help each other in this business. And I found some really great authors, and honestly, like I wanted to do it to publish my own titles and, have a company behind the Daemon Manx product. But I also wanted to see that, if I could help, maybe a handful of authors so that they don't fall into that trap that I fell into, and just, steer them in the right direction, that's winning too, So Last Waltz Publishing right now, I have five authors, including myself. I have we have a noir series. It's called the Monochrome Noir by author Jack Wells, and this is a murder mystery series that takes place in a world devoid of color.
Ooh.
So imagine a grayscale world where items of color are the rarest of commodities. And people will murder or do just about anything to acquire an item of color. So we have that. We have a very gothic writing young lady from Seattle named Diana Olney. I've just picked up a pretty prolific reviewer and writer herself named Heather Miller. She has her second novel is coming out on September 27th, and it's called Tales My Grandmother Told Me, and it's a collection of stories, ghost stories that her grandmother used to tell her as a child, and all that's inspired her memories of that. And each story is accompanied by a little history of, her memories of when she was told it, why her grandmother remembered that story so much. It's really good. She's got some really interesting stuff. So, yeah, Last Waltz Publishing, we're small. We're looking to get bigger, and we have a couple anthologies coming out this fall. So, I'm looking at 23 to be a really big year for Last Waltz Publishing.
Cool. Sounds like you've got a really, small but excellent group of authors there. So it sounds, all those books sound intriguing. All those stories sound great. So, yeah. And I'm not just blowing steam here. You're very good at pitching stuff. You know that? Describing these stories in ways that are compelling.
Well, you know what the thing is like me as a publisher and me as an author. Like, if the story doesn't speak to me, why would I sign it? Why would I write it? Why would I publish it? It's and I reject a lot of submissions. Not because I think everybody has a voice and everybody's voice should be heard, but I'm really trying to be a little different. And if there's a reason why I reject it, it's just not the right fit for Last Waltz. And,
absolutely.
And that's all.
Like,
we all get rejected.
Like, for example, I wouldn't submit one of my stories because it sounds like I'm just not in your genre, right? In your category. If I was going to submit a story to a publisher, I probably wouldn't pick Last Waltz just because it's just not my stuff,
Yeah, I would say, if you're more geared towards urban or not even urban fantasy, but towards fantasy styled writing, we haven't broken that part of the market yet. We're not exactly in that niche. So.
Yeah, so it's not. I mean, just as by way of example to say, obviously that's not personal. That's just business, and it's also just brand in some way. You got to tackle one thing at a time. And one of my problems as a publishing as an independent publisher is that I tried to tackle science fiction and fantasy kind of alternating right from the start, and that just didn't work. I don't think people are ready to just read, oh, this first book was fantasy, this second book was sci-fi, and a lot of them were not in the same series, even when I did go back to the same genre again. So it's like, oh, okay, I'm really working on that for 2022 and 2023. I really need to get more books out in big series. That's just how independent publishing works a lot of the time. Now, some people can do it. Some people get by with smaller series, smaller books, or just different approaches. But this is my approach, and I need to stick to it.
Yeah, I'm seeing the real. Amazon is such an algorithm.
Yes.
That you have to figure out if you want to, break the market and make sales. And it looks like if you want to really get into the Amazon algorithm, it's through series.
Yeah.
There's got to be a consistency for sure of what you're putting out, I guess, as far as the series goes.
Yeah, that's why I'm from now on I'm trying to write. This is kind of an update on me, but I'll just say, and we're running low on time, so actually we're almost out of time. But I'll just say this quick, and I'll give you a few extra minutes. Is that my the series I'm working on right now that I just started recently is it's space opera, so it's sci-fi, it's far future sci-fi, but the first book is called Burned in Her Fire. And I think that title isn't going to change, even though it's weird, because it describes this, because this is a story about like advanced technology that's almost magic, right? It's so far advanced, and so I think that's going to fit with my brand all right. But the main thing I'm going to rely on to make it just count is to do a 10-book series and not look back until it's done. And hopefully, because I can go pretty quick, I'll have all that out this year. Yeah. Anyway, that's a side thing. So. Damon, we are about out of time, but let's say one more question before we get rolling out here. Have you got? I mean, it seems like you've written a lot of shorter stuff. Have you written any novels? You got any longer work in the works?
Yeah, it's a work in progress. It actually isn't a work in progress because the original first draft it is a work in progress. The first draft was 500,000 words long.
Holy crap!
Yeah, so
sorry.
as I've gone through and done the full redraft of it, I knocked 100,000 words off of it.
That's not a book. That's a series.
Yeah, so it is a series, and it's actually a 4-book series. And you know what I mean? It's not at the point where it's ready to go to an editor.
Sure.
But I've spent 3 years on this, and you ever see the Alpha Pro little pocket? They look like a word processor.
The keyboard that just sends the text elsewhere.
I wrote the whole thing on this.
Wow.
During lockdown and quarantine, and I wrote 500,000 words in 6 months.
Nice.
But now the editing and the redrafting process has been
a bit
considerable.
Much. Yeah.
So this has been my opus, and it's creature horror.
Ooh.
During the week before Halloween in a small town in 1979.
So kind of Stephen King. I mean, a little bit of that in that category, maybe.
I've had some beta readers tell me it meets The Stand.
Okay. Now, geez, holy crap! Now it's like I got to read that when it comes out.
Okay, so here's how it happens: it's 1979, and there's a Halloween party going on at Troy Fisher's house. Except several of the children couldn't make it because they have the flu. And later that night, as Troy is blowing out the candles in the garage, his best friend Rob, who was unable to come to the party, is standing in the back of the garage in his pajamas and his bare feet. And he's got purple circles under his eyes. and he goes into convulsions. And Rob and the Aaron twins are rushed to the hospital, and a virus is broken out in the town of Garrett Grove, and the whole series takes place in 1 week's time.
Wow.
And it's small town. You've got the doctor trying to save the day. You've got the coroner trying to figure out what's going on, and you've got the Catholic priest who's ready to wage war against the powers of evil.
Wow, that sounds incredible. It sounds also kind of reminds me of a Stranger Things kind of vibe, that kind of stuff. But
it's got that feel because it's got the coming of age younger kids story in it, which I think would be good for the time. But it takes place a little before. It's 1979, so,
right?
And there's no technology. If you were lost in the woods, man, you were lost in the woods. You don't have a cell phone. You are. I'll
just say that scares me. I grew up. I was born in 1990, so I've never really known a world without the internet. And I know the internet's terrifying, but there's a different kind of fear to a dark woods. You don't even have
getting stuck on the road without a phone.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
so that's what's going on. It's called. I'm not going to say the name.
You don't have to share the name. It's fine.
Okay,
it's fine.
but
if you're not comfortable with it, it's a work in progress.
Next year, it's going to be a 4-part series by Daemon Manx, and you will definitely know it's going to be a rapid release. It's going to come out each 4 books in total, 1 a month, leading up to Halloween of next year.
So you got a deadline, but hey, that's plenty of time. You wrote the book in 6 months. You can finish it in a year, I bet.
It'll be up to the editors and the cover artists to really meet the crunch. That's for sure.
Oh, absolutely. So, Daemon, thanks for being on the show. It's been a lot of fun.
Hey, thanks for having me. I had a blast. I know I talked your ear off, but
oh no, I think we traded blows on that one.
Absolutely, I had a great time. Thanks for having me.
No, it's great. Tell people where again they can find some of your stories that are currently out, and and where they can find your site if you have one.
All right, so it's Daemon Manx. You can find me at www.daemonmanx.com, and you can check out our publishing company, Last Waltz Publishing, at www.lastwaltzpublishing.com. I'm on Facebook. I'm on Instagram. I'm on Twitter. I'm on TikTok. You can find me anywhere on social media, Daemon Manx or Last Waltz Publishing. I'd love to hear from you.
Oh, awesome. And thanks for this and thanks again for listening. This podcast can be found at mentalcellularpublications.com. We're hosted by Libsyn. But you can also find my books on Amazon, because that's pretty much where they are if you want the ebooks, or basically anywhere you can get print-on-demand books online. I'm told Demon Scroll is pretty good, and yes, the top review on it still is from the original version that was not as well edited, but you won't have that experience if you read the book now, so go check it out. That's epic fantasy, and it's a little bit dark, but it's not that dark. Anyway, that's not a good selling point. See, I'm not a Daemon Manx. I can't pitch a book the way he does. That's why I don't have a publishing house of my own. At least I don't want to publish other people. But anyway, thanks for listening, everybody, and I'll talk to you again soon. Bye-bye.
That tears it.